Divorced men of Reddit. What moment with your former wife made me think, yep, I'm asking this girl to divorce me? Real confessions. Massive reactions. These are the wildest, most gripping stories Reddit couldn't stop talking about. Hit subscribe, because the next one might be even crazier. Story 1. She let me know she was pregnant and wanted my permission to tell all her girlfriends during a girls' night out. Since I knew there was no possible way it was my child, she was also unknowingly admitting to having an affair. I can math, and she can't. It was with her boss. Lawyered up the next day, and he ate her alive in court. I got primary custody of our child we already had, and child support, and a sheriff's notice that she had to vacate my home in 30 days. I never knew she could be that stupid. Story 2. When my stepdaughter became a teenager, my ex ramped up the nutso. She had always been an impatient, angry screamer of a parent. But as my stepdaughter became a young woman, my ex just went crazy with envy or something. I know lots of moms have a hard time with teenage daughters, but their base-level patience is so much better than my ex's was. Threats of cutting hair in middle of night while daughter slept, pulling hair, slapping face, ridiculing in front of her friends, swinging something that missed and put a hole in the wall. I was out, with the kids. Story 3. My wife was around less and less, had to be free to live her life, go out with her friends. More often than not she would call me to pick our daughter up from daycare, after promising to pick her up and have some girl time. Just tell her I'm working late or not feeling well. She always had something better to do and the kids were old enough to know better. I went to pick our daughter up one day. When they called her name she came running over until she saw it wasn't mom, again, slumped her shoulders and slowly walked over to ask what's her excuse this time. That was the breaking point, told her to get out, even helped pay her security deposit to get her out. Story 4. During the last year and a half of our marriage she became extremely psychologically abusive. She was a narcissist, controlled my every move, would isolate me, refused physical contact. I was just an extension to her life, was not allowed to talk to any female, was not allowed to hang out with any friends, or she would ignore me for up to 5 days at a time. Double standards everywhere, verbal abuse, and the list can continue, but it hurts to think about. The last straw for me was when she threatened to kill me because I came home from work late even though she knew I would be home late. It was just a little too late for her, and she also threatened to hit me the same day. This was the second time this happened, and I talked with several people at work about it and they suggested that I run. I had texts of the threats on my phone and contacted a lawyer that same week. She agreed to sign since I told her I would take severe legal action if she didn't. Thankfully no children and it was a clean divorce and I'm happily divorced. Story 5. When she presented a picture of our 4-year-old daughter and me laying next to each other on the couch watching Blue's Clues to our marriage counselor as evidence of my inappropriate conduct around our kids. Thank God he saw right through that bullshit immediately and told her to knock it off. Edit. Many asked, so here's the deal. We've been divorced almost 5 years now. The process wasn't fair, but that wasn't really my ex's fault. No allegations of child abuse or misconduct were brought up against me during the proceedings, so that was good. They wouldn't have flown for a minute in court anyway. Our kids are older now and every day are becoming better equipped to see and understand the difference between what's reasonable and right and what's simply just batshit insane, and it's not working out all that well for their mother, who hasn't changed her MO much if at all since we parted ways. So it goes. I'm happily remarried now to a woman with kids of her own kids who were friends and schoolmates of MY kids before she and I even got to know each other. They're all our kids now. Life is good. No more shenanigans. Story 6. We met and spent the first 7 years of our married life on the West Coast, then moved east. 5 years later, I took a job back on the West Coast, but it was the middle of the school year, so I went out ahead and lived on my own until everyone could join me. Things hadn't been very good between us for a while, but I hadn't articulated it to her, or even myself, beyond vague feelings of dissatisfaction. One weekend, out there on my own, I decided to take a day and drive to one of my favorite towns, a town in which I had lived long before I knew her, a town we had visited often while married. It was late afternoon, was about to head back to my hotel when I realized that I could visit a particular beach that had special meaning to me from my earlier life there. I stopped at a convenience store, grabbed a grolsch like I used to drink on that beach, and drove out there. Hiked out to a specific spot I remembered, sat down, popped the beer, and looked out over the ocean. And it hit me that I hadn't done that in over 20 years. Whenever we'd visit the area, I'd suggest stopping at the beach, but she wasn't interested and would always veto the idea. I'm sure reading this it seems like the tiniest thing, but it was the catalyst for me realizing just how completely dissatisfied I was with our relationship. I think from the time I sat down, I knew it was over within maybe 10 minutes. Just sitting there, sipping my beer, looking at the ocean. Edit, RIP inbox, and my first gold. Thanks, Redditus. I seriously thought this would be one of those I am late to the thread so no one will read it posts. Thank you for all the incredibly kind words. Grolsch is indeed a Dutch beer. It can be had in distinctive green bottles with hinged, resealable ceramic caps. I chose it because when I had lived in that place before and had headed out to that specific beach with friends, I'd always bring Grolsch. Story 7. Preface. We were doing a trial separation. She moved into the spare bedroom of our apartment. Divorce had been thrown around, but we still spent time together and slept together. I wasn't seriously considering divorce, but rather counseling, etc. Up until the day I came home from work at the same time I came home every day and she was in her room being fucked by some random guy she met on Tinder. She had not told him she was married. I kicked him out of the apartment and made it clear to her I would be moving out as soon as possible. Edit. Must add that she expressed interest in counseling as well. And that we discussed ground rules for the separation, one of which was do not fuck other people. Edit 2. Thanks for all the love. For those asking, I moved out because I couldn't afford the apartment on my own. I didn't kick the guy's ass, but I did tell him while punching the door that he had 3 minutes to get out of my apartment. I said if he wasn't out in 3 minutes I was going to break down the door, and it wouldn't be to shake hands. Proud of that line from Enraged Me. Usually I'm not very articulate when angry. He was out in a little over 2 minutes. Story 8. 15 years in, and I find texts on her phone. Completely blindsided. No clue she had it in her to cheat. Told me it was just texting. Begged for forgiveness. I caved. A month later, checked the phone bill to find that it never stopped. Confronted her again. Cue more begging and more denial on my part that she would let the life we had built go down in flames. This went on for a few months. So many promises. One night, I caught her on the phone when she thought I had left. Suddenly it's not just texts. Sometimes it was phone calls too. Just a friend she could talk to that she let things go too far with. Promised to break all contact. Swore it was never physical. Then I found emails. She detailed things that made me sick to read, but also included descriptions of his house. She broke finally, but swore it was all just in the line of duty. That's how she met, you see. Visiting nurse service, and this guy was a client. Promised she was done. Loved me, you see. No chance she was going to let 15 years go like that. I wasn't buying it anymore though. She announced she was going out one night with a work friend. Promised they were only going to the bar, then she'd be home. Maybe late, but not too late. She had taken over her own phone account by then, but wasn't bright enough to understand that Google Latitude was still showing me where she was, and I wasn't about to show my hand. She kissed me goodbye and beelined right for his house, and was there until the wee hours of the morning. Once I knew where she had headed, I called her dad and my best friend to keep me from doing anything dumb. I will love them both forever for keeping me calm while my world went fucking insane all around me. My father-in-law offered to stay with the kids and wait for her to get home. Around 3 a.m., while couch surfing my buddy's place, she sent me a nasty text asking where the fuck I thought I was. I texted her a screenshot of her little GPS at her boyfriend's and let her know I'd be sending her some paperwork soon. Story 9. She started working at a job with people that were closer to her age, 25 to 30. Instead of a job where her co-workers were in their late 40s, early 50s. She wanted to go out and hang out with them rather than come home and be with her family, myself and our at the time 2-year-old daughter and a godforsaken cat that she just had to have. There were a lot of other little things that added up over time, mainly her desire to drink and drive, without our daughter in the car thankfully, and 4 days a week of not coming home until 2 or 3 in the morning and not telling a soul where she was or what she was doing. After a month of that, she said she wanted a divorce. I fought it with everything I had for 3 months. Decided to go to counseling, where the counselor asked her ex-wife, "In your mind, is this marriage already over?" After a literal 5-minute silence, I had the answer I needed. Separated a week later and divorced a year later. We're still civil for our daughter's sake. But I will say that after the initial shock of actually going through a divorce after us both proclaiming to do whatever it takes and never getting a divorce, I will say I'm much happier now. I was able to save up and buy a house for my daughter and I, which I never would have been able to do had I stayed married. Story 10. Besides the narcissism, random violence, and violent outbursts, it was her strange punishments. Her last one doomed her. My crime. I forgot milk on the way home from work, so she didn't talk to me, not one word, for a week. Pure bliss, for a week. When she asked if I was ready to apologize, I handed her the divorce papers. Why? Because you rob me of solitude but provide me with no companionship. Story 11. There were many reasons, but this was the final straw. My grandmother was on her deathbed. My ex took this time to throw a childish fit because I ordered food that she didn't like. I realized at that point how completely miserable I was and how fucking short life is. So we divorced. She took all my money and my kids, plus child support. I've still never been happier, and every time I have to interact with her it blows my mind that we made it 9 years. I guess when we were together I was so trained to comply and overlook. I now see what an absolute toxic bully she was. Story 12. She had lost her job, again, after quitting a decent one because she didn't get along with her boss. Anyways, a few months go by and I'm doing everything. Cooking, laundry, dishes, yard work, etc. I'd ask the kids what does mom do all day and they said she plays on the computer all day. So the final straw came when I came home from work and had to wash dishes so I could make dinner. Dinner is made, so I tell family it's ready. She comes to get a plate and serves herself first instead of our youngest child, who was 4 at the time and couldn't serve himself. As I watched this unfold, it dawned on me. If I'm going to do all the work, I might as well do it by myself or find a partner to share the load with, because she clearly didn't want to be on my team. Edit. To those mentioning depression. Yes, she was, and maybe still is. She was on meds for it, and we went to counseling after the birth of one of our kids, and she had postpartum depression. At this time she stepped out on our marriage with at least 3 guys. I finally got proof with hidden caller ID and a voice-activated tape recorder hidden under our bed. Yep, got to hear them having sex. Long story, but we stayed together. IDK if the counseling helped or not. I also need to add that she was never good with money. Blew a small inheritance in record fashion. She would give me money for joint bills and I was handing it back over so she could put gas in her car, or she had bill of hers due. One year we got a nice tax refund and she promptly tells me she owes her stepdad $2,000. WTF. Still stayed. In short, my earlier response was to Ops question, and the edit is some background so you know that this was something that had been building for years. Story 13. Wasn't married but about 1 month away from marrying. We worked together at the same job for about a year, but she was first shift and I was second. We both had weekends off so we could and did things on the weekend. We had got everything paid for and were set. One weekend, actually on my birthday, I went to get a haircut before we went out for the night. I weirdly noticed this one car in the parking lot of our apartments. Didn't think too much as there was a shit ton of cars that would come and go. She had gone up to a casino with her mom the previous night and stayed overnight. That wasn't uncommon as they were both huge gamblers. I got back and did some cleaning and she walked in. She looked at me and threw her ring on the table and said, "We need to talk. I think I like Joe more now and decided I want to be with him. I don't need the ring and you can cancel the wedding." It all clicked that car I seen was Joe's. She didn't go up to the casino with her mom but with Joe instead. Even more fucked up is I called her mom to see how close they were to home and she covered for her daughter. I then come to find out her friend Joe was an ex-lover who also broke up her last engagement. He was always trying to befriend me too and act like we were best friends. I have never felt less of a man, more ashamed and hurt than when this happened. I sacrificed a lot for her. I was there doing anything and everything for her and her family when her dad very slowly passed away. And she ends up treating me like a pet she could get rid of when she got bored. I still can't remember a few months of time after that happened. I was in a bad place. Edit. I just realized I never finished this up. It took a while to get my head straight. My best friend of over 20 years, to me a brother and family, helped me out so much. He made sure I was going to be okay and took me out to blow off steam. We took an awesome trip to some funner spots with a few other people. I owe him so much for the help. My family really helped too. I ended up meeting my fiancé now about 6 months after I had that shit happen. We have been together for over 5 years and we will be celebrating our first daughter's birthday on June 29th. Amazing what has happened since then. My one advice is don't ever give up or think you are worthless. You are worth everything to somebody out there no matter what. I can say I am almost embarrassed by how I reacted back then. Edit again. I never expected this to get this much attention. Thank you everybody for the kind words. And yes, my ex and I were together for about 4 years. I will say after I met my new fiancé now, about a month into dating I got a new job and got to say good riddance to the last of my ex. One of the greatest things ever. The oddest thing too was my best friend who stuck with me actually had his dad pass away my last week at work. My last day, I had told them I needed to leave at 3 p.m. to go help my best and his family with last-minute wake and funeral stuff. They told I can't leave and they won't let me. After how my ex got everybody there to somehow feel really bad for her about leaving me and I got left with people telling me how they feel bad for her, I just dropped my shit on the ground and left. I remember the supervisor saying you are going to get into lots of trouble and I looked at her dead in the eyes and go, what? Am I going to get fired? And just started laughing on my way out. Story 14. I worked, she played. She woke me up in the middle of the night to grab the extra blanket off the bed. I expected to find her disgruntled on the couch alone the next morning. I found her in the guest bed with another woman, both naked. No forewarnings or clueless. Just despondent betrayal. I woke her for answers and got a whole lot of mumbles. Decided to split for space. That weekend we both ended up at the same bar on the same dance floor. I thought she'd followed me there to make amends. She'd brought the same girl and completely ignored me when I called out to her. When I walked up to her she pretended I was a stranger. I told her I'm not going to play any games and didn't know what was going on. She said she didn't want to be married. I gave her the ring back and went to tell my friends goodbye that night. I didn't want to tell them why. I felt so embarrassed. She saw me talking to my friends and decided to make out in front of us with her new woman directly on the dance floor 8 feet away from where I stood while everyone stared. Looking back now I realize she probably was scared to come out. I can give her credit for that. But she was an awful person for the way she did it and for never having the courage to say to my face whatever she was feeling. I thought we were best friends. I thought we were going to be together forever. She asked me to marry her. Now I'm just grateful for not being with a liar and a coward. I've made a fresh start. Sold everything. Traded my entire wardrobe and style to feel like I'm in a new life. Sure, I've lost more money than I ever thought imaginable. And the dog. I just keep optimistic that I'll find someone who deserves my time. I don't focus on the past and I have faith in God and the future. Whoever I marry next will be grateful for a man like me and loyal. But until then I'm gonna enjoy the single life again and just play. Story 15. Saturday before Easter of this year she came at me with her desire to go to Germany and see friends that would pay for her round trip there and back. We got into an argument about it. I voiced my suspicion that something more was going on. We didn't speak Sunday. Then Monday rolls around and she tells me she's done. So I get home early, look around on her laptop and find chats between her and her German girlfriend. I invade her privacy because she had cheated before. She had been planning on divorcing me since November last year. So I call her at work and tell her to pack her shit and get out. I feel so much better not having the trust issues with her, but this whole ordeal is wreaking havoc on my 3 children. Story 16. I always refused to raise my voice during arguments, which usually made her crazier and scream louder. After one such argument, during which our 3-year-old daughter was playing upstairs, She started coming down at the same time her mother was storming up the stairs like a child of comparable age. Our daughter was in the way and her mother got in her face and screamed, "God, I fucking hate you, move." Of course, my daughter came to me, hurt. That was the moment I decided it was over. Edit. This was 13 years ago, my daughters are now 16 and 12. Unfortunately, I found out the hard way that, particularly in that day and age, family courts were seriously skewed towards the favor of the mother in many cases unless there was proof of serious neglect, drug abuse, or physical or sexual abuse. The girls, I believe, are fairly well adjusted and doing okay. Their mother changed in regards to her direct dealings with them, however continued and still uses them as a way to hurt me whenever she sees an opportunity. I've taken her to court for custodial interference, which is punishable up to 30 days in jail and a $1,000 fine, and they slapped her on the wrist with not so much as an admonishment. It's fucked, but I do the best to keep an eye on the situation and try to give them as much stability as possible when they're around me, so they have an idea of what normal is. Story 17. My ex was one hell of a disaster. Yet I stood up by her and tried to work with the hand I had been dealt, so to speak, because she was my wife. I discovered she was cheating on me. I expelled her from my house. As the rage subsided, we started talking again. I convinced her to move back in and we agreed, as she had suggested when I first confronted her, to go to therapy together. She promised to never contact the guy again. 5 months later, as I am finally facing the fact that she lies to me constantly and about all kinds of things, besides the usual not putting up with her share of the effort, expecting me to foot the bill on everything, not sharing stuff she should be sharing with her husband, etc., I discover she's talking to the guy again. So, she keeps cheating and I don't trust her word one bit. I'm done here. Now, we had a kid together, and this was in late November. So I chose to extend my misery for 7 more weeks, so I wouldn't ruin my son's Christmas. I counted the days until a January 15th, when I kicked her out for good. Those weeks weren't that difficult, actually, because she had made me miserable for years, and this period at least had a clear ending date. Divorced now, and still bitter about all the wasted years with that undeserving bitch. Story 18. My wife at the time told me that she had called a local radio station which often discusses hardships that military families go through and sometimes gives away $1,000 to a family in need of help. She said that she informed the radio station of my deployment and how I didn't come back the same, and she told them about our daughter, 2 months premature and only 8 months old at the time, who had numerous health problems. My wife explained to me that the radio station hadn't given away the $1,000 in quite a few weeks, so they were going to give us $10,000 for her telling such a heartfelt story. She called me while I was at work to tell me what had happened, and I was really excited. Asked my SNIC to help me draw up a savings plan and figure out which debts should be paid off first, etc. Things were looking up. I get home that night and rather than being greeting with an enthusiastic hug, she points to the loft and mouths, "Not now, I'm on the phone." So I go upstairs and wait for her to finish. While I was waiting, I could hear her saying things like, "Yeah, I can get those papers to you, and no problem, I can have that ready by tomorrow." Maybe they need identification and proof of my deployment or something. Whatever. Fast forward to later that night and like usual I'm having trouble sleeping. I decide to get on the computer and listen to the podcast from the radio show. After a few searches I find it and start listening to it. This is where my blood starts to boil. She told the DJs that she was a single lady living on her own and that her sister married a Marine and they had a child named Marie, our daughter's middle name. She goes on to say that Marie is now in her custody after the Marine husband, was killed in Afghanistan and the mother, her IRL single sister with no kids, Jackie, was killed in a car wreck and Marie was now my wife's responsibility. Hundreds of people called in and offered to help, many of which owned business and wanted to offer things like baby supplies or completely furnishing a nursery for her. Literally thousands of people had heard this bullshit fabricated story, including some of my co-workers. It was the radio station she was on the phone with and they were asking her to provide death certificates and a birth certificate for Marie, which is why I was shooed away. Story 19. I'd found evidence of potential cheating. Despite this, I still was willing to work on things. I confronted her about her feelings towards me, not the cheating. When I point blank asked her if she was interested in counseling or trying to work things out, she said no. That was the first time. It would have been better to have stuck with it. There was a tumultuous time after that where we flip-flopped and were trying to work things out, sorta. She complicated things. I had broached the cheating with her and we made rules during our maintenance period. One of which was that she was no longer to have contact with her friend she was cheating with. I ended up finding out that she was still Facebook friends with him. When I calmly explained why this would hurt me, she turned it around that I was the bad guy. I started living with a friend at this point. During my drunken half-sobbing tirade where I explained everything to him, I finally realized that I don't want to be with this woman anymore. She doesn't love, respect, or care for me at all, and I deserve those things. Moved out, moved on, and have since found a wonderful woman that I will marry in April. Even though I figured I would never get married again. Edit, I got hurt, it sucked. It sucked really bad. I never expected to get a divorce. I took some time to work on myself and address the mistakes that I made in my marriage and past relationships. I ended up finding a person who 100% is in sync with me and communicates like a mature adult. She is super smart and helps me through my emotions as I help her through hers. I did a complete 180 on marriage. It wasn't a struggle, it feels right. I thought long and hard after I had decided to get married. I wanted to make sure I was not making the same mistakes again. I believe I found my true partner, and each day gives me more reasons to believe that to be true. Story 20. The final straw for me was the ex's family, mom, dad, sister, and her husband and their 3 kids. We were all going to her birthday dinner at a medium-scale restaurant. No big deal, she and I had been fighting the entire time up to this. We took separate cars even. The meal she doesn't even sit by me, I end up sitting next to her niece and brother-in-law. She refuses to look at me. The meal ends with me paying some $200 for the meal. I heard about it when I got home of how I was making her dad look bad and how I should have let her parents pay and so on. Her dad is mid-upper manager for his company making $100,000, so I didn't see how I was making him look bad. I gave her present, a new printer thing that she's been wanting for months. Because years before she told me no more flowers, no more jewelry. She hated it even after I had to spend 4 hours getting her laptop to even speak to it. That night my dog and I were asked to sleep upstairs on the couch. The dog did because I'm sure he just felt bad. But after 10 years of dating, of dealing with her controlling behavior, my not being good enough at anything, and starting fights when during the summer I would go with friends to another part of the state or out of state 3 hours away for maybe 5 days out of the entire summer. I married her for 5 months and just had enough. I was tired of dealing with it. Not to mention she cared more for the guy she's with now than she ever did about me.